if you've watched the overview video from the Bible Project on Philippians, you'll know that this letter was written by Paul to the church at Philippi. And it's written to all of the saints, so it's all of the Christians as well as the elders or the overseers and the deacons. So that's who this letter is written to. And Paul starts by thanking God, by prayers of thanksgiving. And he says that he's thanking God. I thank my God in all remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, for you are making my prayer with joy. And why is he joyful? Why is he joyful? Because of their partnership with him in the gospel. And we're going to see this becomes a theme from the first day until now. So they've been his friends. They've really been his friends for some time. They've just been supporting him and working with him for the sake of the gospel. And what he then says is, and I am sure of this, that he who begun a good work in you will bring it to completion on the day of Jesus Christ. And that is just such a wonderful promise of God. And it's one of those promises that we can remember when things are difficult in our life. It is one of those things that I often repeat myself when I think that I'm failing or I'm struggling. I'm like thankful that he who has begun a good work in me will bring it to completion, will bring it to an end. And so he's saying to the church of Philippi, God started something and don't worry, he's going to finish it. And he goes on and he says, it is right for me to feel this way about you because I hold you in my heart, for you are all partakers with me of grace. And so this word partakers is very similar to the word partners. Here he is, he's writing to the church in Philippi and saying, you're my partners, you are my friends, you are working with me. And even though I am both in my imprisonment and in the defence and confirmation of what? Of the gospel. And so we see this idea of here the gospel being repeated. Paul is interested, his focus, his attention is on the spread, the defence, the sharing of the gospel. And, he's encouraging the Philippians to live their life in that way too. So he goes on to say, for God is my witness, how I yearn for you with all the affection of Jesus Christ. And it is my prayer. And so Paul's about to start a prayer. This is his prayer. So what's he praying for the Philippian church? He's first of all praying, number one, that their love may abound with more and more, so that they may love more and more and increase in love. And he's also praying that they would have knowledge and discernment, so they would understand the truths of God, and they would also be able to see, discern, know what is true. And we need discernment in these days, don't we? What is true, what is false, what is fake news. He's asking and praying their love would grow more and more with knowledge and with discernment, so that, and this is why. Why does he want their love to abound more and more? So that you may approve or understand what is excellent. So, and again, here's this word, so that you may be pure and blameless. His prayer is that love would lead to a holy life. And it goes on to say that we, again, would be filled with the fruits of righteousness. So holiness, love leads to holiness, which leads to the fruit of the Spirit, which is righteousness, which comes through Jesus Christ. So then he starts to talk in this section about his imprisonment. He says, I want you to know, brothers, my friends, my family in Philippi, I want you to know that what has happened to me, which is being imprisoned, has really served to advance the what? The gospel. Here we see it again. He's advancing the gospel. That's his primary concern. So it has become known throughout the whole imperial guard and to all the rest that my imprisonment is for Jesus Christ. For Christ. All right. And most of the brothers, having become confident in the Lord by my imprisonment, are much more bold to speak the word. What is the word? The word is the gospel. So he's passionate about the gospel. He's saying, do you know what? Me being in prison, prison's okay because it's for the gospel. And my imprisonment is making other people bolder. Now, in these days when we are facing the challenges of the coronavirus, hopefully what the coronavirus is helping us do is become more confident in the Lord. You know, people are looking for an answer. They're desperate to know why is this happening? What's the answer? What's going to alleviate my fears? What's the issues to do with my mortality and where I'm going? And we should feel bolder to advance the gospel. Amen. Some, it says here, verse 15, some indeed preach Christ from envy and rivalry, and others from goodwill. The latter do it out of love. So some people do it. The latter do it. So this is the those that preach from goodwill. They're the latter there. Preach it out of love, knowing that I am here for the defence of the gospel. Again, the defence of the gospel. See, again, we're making that connection between these two phrases. Paul uses the same phrases in the same again and again. The former, that's those that are speaking from envy and rivalry, proclaim Christ out of selfish ambition, not sincerely, but thinking to afflict me in my imprisonment. They're trying to make Paul's life more difficult. What then? I'm not bothered, he says, only in every way, whether in pretense or truth, Christ is proclaimed. And what does Christ proclaim? Christ is the gospel. So we see Paul's passion for the expanse of the gospel, and that's his urgency for the Philippians. He's saying, don't worry about me. I'm in prison, but it's okay because I'm here for the purpose of the gospel. So we come on to really one of the most famous passages in the Bible that you'll know once we get there. And it says, yes, and I will rejoice, for I know that through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. He knows that he is going to be okay. Whatever happens, he's going to be okay. As it is my eager expectation and hope that I will not at all be ashamed. I'm going to be okay, guys. Don't worry about me. But that with full courage, now, as always, Christ will be honoured in my body, whether by life or by death. And this is one of the most famous verses in the Bible. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. What an amazing statement. Paul is saying, right, for me to live is for Jesus, and die is to gain. He goes on to explain what he means. If I am to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labour for me. Yet which I shall choose, I cannot tell. I'm hard pressed between the two. What do I choose? He almost can't decide. Should I live or die? Who knows? It doesn't matter to me. All right. My desire, he wants to die. He's like, I'm happy to die. Why does he want to die? Because to die means to go to be with Christ. It means to go to heaven. It means to get his reward. It's actually harder for him to remain in the flesh, to remain alive. But why does he want to stay alive? Because it is necessary on your account. Right? He wants to stay to see the gospel go forward. If I die, well, I'll go to be with Jesus. But if I've got to stay, then I shall suffer for the sake of the gospel. Convinced of this, I know that I will remain and continue with you all for your progress and joy in the faith, so that in me you may have ample cause to glory in Christ Jesus because of my coming to you again. And here we go again, right? So he's saying, basically, I don't mind if I live or die. And if we think about our moment we're living in as a church, in this coronavirus pandemic, we should not be afraid, because for us to live is to proclaim the gospel. But to die is to be with Jesus. Either way, it's a win-win situation. It is win-win for us. Win-win. We either stay and live for Jesus, and see his kingdom go forward, or we die and go be with him. And what confidence that gives us. But what's Paul's encouragement again? It comes back here, right, to a little bit earlier. It says, only let your manner of life be worthy of what? Be worthy of the gospel of Christ. Live a life that is honouring to the gospel. And we just want to draw your attention back to his prayer. What does he pray up here? My prayer is that your love may abound more and more, that you might be holy, that you might be fruitful, and it goes that you might live a life worthy of the gospel. He's saying you've got to live right. You can't just live as you want. You have to live as Christ would live in order to honour the gospel. Those people that say they can do what they want and follow Jesus and proclaim the gospel are lying. So he says, so that whether I come and I see you or am absent, I may hear that you are standing firm in one spirit and in one mind, striving side by side for the faith of what? For the faith of the gospel, right? But let me just delete those bits out a second. Right, so for the faith of the gospel. Can you see how many times the gospel comes forward? And his prayer, his desire for them is that they would stand firm in one spirit. And that's what we're doing. By doing this Bible reading scheme, we're standing firm in one spirit. We are striving together side by side, aren't we? And we are not frightened in anything. You may be frightened of COVID-19. Let me tell you, you do not need to be afraid. We are not afraid. We are not afraid because we know that we are living for the gospel. We are living in a win-win situation. This is a clear sign to them of their destruction, but of your salvation, and that from God. For it has been granted, I'm going to highlight this phrase, I love this. For it has been granted that to you, that for the sake of Christ, you should not only believe in him, but also suffer for his sake. You know, we may suffer, right? But it's for the sake of Jesus Christ. We're not just believers. We're going to live out this truth. Engage in the same conflict that you saw I had, and now I hear that I still have. I want you to read this chapter again, right? So I want to say, number one, right? Hopefully you've got some context. You now understand the passage. You understand what Paul's talking about. But what I'd like to do, just reread it again and ask this question. God, what are you saying to me? How are you challenging me today, God, to live? I understand what's being said here, and I want that to speak to me. And I'd really encourage you, thirdly, then, to share it on YouVersion. So share it on the YouVersion Bible reading scheme so we can read together. Just to be clear, you don't need to read it 4 times like it said. Yeah, you don't need to read it 4 times. But just reading it like this and reading it once again and then writing something will be fantastic. Okay, guys.